here we are for another episode of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, episode number 184, being recorded on Thursday, October 9th, 2025. Got the cold glass of water, got the hot cup of coffee right here. They balance each other out, one to wake us up, one to keep us hydrated. That's just great, man. I hope you guys are all doing well. It's been a busy week and a half or so, but it's just so nice to be home. I tell you, I love being home. That's not to say I don't like going out, and doing stuff in the context of furthering life's missions, life's goals. That's great in its own right. But I'm definitely the kind of guy, at the end of the night, I want to be in my bed. I don't want to be somewhere else. I don't want to be just milling around. It's great to be home. All my stuff is here. All my writings are here. My books are here. It's just so cozy to be at home, especially when it's going to be getting colder in the upcoming months. On a cold winter's night, just being under the covers in bed. But boy, you can't beat that, man. I don't want to be out there and on an icy road or in the snow, just at some bar or anything like that. I'm not an antisocial guy. I'm definitely not. I've been called antisocial in the past, which is definitely not true. I'm just not the kind of guy. I'm not gonna be, going out and hanging out. If I'm going out there, it's gonna be something that's gonna be beneficial. If I'm going to the cinema, or if somebody's like, hey, I gotta go to someone's wedding or something. These are things. That's an obligation in that regard. That it's okay, I'm not gonna say no to, because at that point it's just well, this is an obligation that's gonna benefit someone else's life. That's not like a shallow sort of thing. It's not like, well, I want to go to dinner, but you don't want to come with me. It's like, brother, this isn't going to be benefiting me at all, besides just getting food in my stomach, man. So you got to kind of choose the battles that you fight, choose the hills that you want to die on. Everyone's life is different. Everyone wants to do different things. And I've said it before and I say it again. As long as you're not hurting yourself or anybody else, there's no place for me to tell you what you should be doing with your life. So if you want to go out there and you want to, see your friends, see your acquaintances, whatever it is, man. Just do it, man. You are not the passenger in your own life. You are the one that is moving it forward, and you gotta, not just kind of slum through, man. You really gotta sort of cherish these days and do what you want to do. If that means staying in and getting meaningful work done, then actually you should actually be doing. Or if it's like a Friday night and you want to go out and see your friends or whatever like that, then actually should be doing as well. But that ultimately, these are the battles that you have to sort of pick and choose. I don't know why I use that analogy twice, but speaking of going out, man, it's funny. Recently, I was talking about how I canceled all my subscription services. All my streaming services, I should say. So like Netflix and Mubi and HBO and all that stuff. I'm not paying for any of that anymore. Or I just don't need it anymore. And I was thinking about how I exchanged those for cinema memberships, because right now I have three. I have AMC A-List, I have Cinemark Movie Club, and then I have membership to the local cinema, I guess the smaller films, or the ones that aren't going to get as widely released, I should say. And I was thinking about that, because I'm thinking at the same time, I was like, I'm kind of paying basically around, maybe, I would say less, I didn't do the math, so to speak, of what each subscription service was costing me, streaming service was, but I'm paying essentially for those, and the way that I see it, because I was thinking about this at the cinema yesterday, that I'm getting far more out of these memberships than I am with streaming services. Now you could say, well, Dan, you got the streaming services, you have hundreds of thousands of films at the click of your finger, and that's great. I've said before, I'm not somebody who likes to scroll. I don't like to browse. It's one thing if I'm going on, like Tubi. I love Tubi. Tubi's the one I'll always keep, because obviously it's free, so I got nothing to lose in that regard. But that's one where I think the most interesting stuff is on Tubi. I found the most interesting films on there, documentaries, dramas and all that stuff, where I'm like, man, I never heard of this movie. What is this? This isn't going to be popping up on Netflix or anything like that. That's one thing to add stuff to the queue, or if I'm doing dishes or something, I pop up recommended, boom, right there. Okay, what is this? I'll watch it. I found plenty of great films that way. So some of my favorite watches of the year have just been through. Oh, it's popped up on Tubi, and that's fine. But you have hundreds of thousands of films, and I was thinking to myself, how often am I actually utilizing each of these streaming services? And that's not to say, okay, there's a Netflix original that I want to watch, or there's something, like that. These are. I'm not primarily streaming as this. If I'm going to be streaming something, it's going to be something specific in mind, or it's going to be a film that I'm looking for. And sometimes the streaming services will have it, but I think one of the problems that a lot of people have, including myself, is that the amount of films that are not available on streaming. And it can occasionally be like, oh, that's cool, like streaming all that. There's other ways to get these films, but at the same time, I'm also buying a lot of films. That I have thousands of films here. And the way that I see it, I'm not using the streaming services every opportunity I get. If I was only watching stuff on streaming, that'd be one thing. I get that. But the thing is, I'm going to the cinema every single weekend. I don't think there hasn't been a weekend in, I couldn't even tell you how long, where I at least didn't see one film. I think the only time maybe is if I was like out of town and there wasn't a cinema nearby, and that hasn't happened probably since whenever The Fabelmans came out. I remember I was out of town that weekend, and I wanted to see that film, but it wasn't playing around, and I didn't even get an opportunity to even go to the cinema at all that weekend. So that was one, but that wasn't by choice. That was just like, okay, that's one weekend, however many years ago that film came out, 2-3 years ago. And ever since then, if I'm using the memberships, I'm getting discounted tickets. I'm not getting concessions, but if I'm with my girlfriend and she wants concessions, they're discounted there. Especially if it's a local cinema, you're supporting the cinema directly because they thrive off memberships. And to me, when all these add up, the AMC, the Cinemark, and the local cinema, I'm getting far more out of these memberships in total than I am with the streaming services. And that's, and a lot of people aren't going to the cinema, and that's fine. If you're somebody who goes once in a while, or you're only going there to see, a big kind of, superhero movie or something like that, that's fine, I get that. But for somebody like me, the cinema, going to the cinema is such it's part of my life's routine, where not going to the cinema feels like not washing the dishes, or it feels like not, cleaning, the, I don't know, the living room or something like that, where it's just like it kind of builds and builds, and you're like, man, this can't be left undone, and I just love the cinema so much. I will always go to the cinema. I've said that before. I don't care if every cinema around closes. I will travel. I don't care if the closest cinema is 5 hours away. I'll go for the weekend once a month, and I'll see everything I can in that one weekend, because, being in a cinema, being there sometimes with people, sometimes not. Sometimes you get good audiences, sometimes you don't. I've had far more great experiences there than I have bad ones, especially since post-COVID. I really haven't had, I can't even think of an experience since, theaters fully opened back up, where I was like, man, that was a terrible experience watching that in theater. There's been a couple times where I'm like, man, this guy needs to knock it off, but like nothing egregious enough where I like, if I'm watching a film on the cinema, man, I'm hyper focused on that. So it's got to be real egregious for me to really kind of snap out of the movie. And it could just be the showings that I'm going to that I'm getting lucky, or where I sit. I don't sit in the back. I just sit in the front. I'm away from people on their telephone and talking and all that, because people whispering, you still hear it. So if I'm in the front, man, that's just great. I love the front. I love being there. But even recently, going to the drive-in, the whole atmosphere. My gosh, man, just being at like a local drive-in, man, you're out there, you get the lawn chairs, you're sitting out in front of the car. It was a beautiful night. I was watching a double feature, right under the stars. The weather was perfect. I had delicious coffee. We were right near the concession booth. That's like an underground sort of thing. You could just smell it, and it just talking to the people there. I saw a dude in a t-shirt. We were talking about some films and stuff. Good guy. He was talking about, he was showing his kid these movies for the first time, and I was like, my gosh, man, I'm not somebody who, I'm like, yeah, the communal experience of it all. Because ultimately, if I'm going to the cinema, I'm not trying to, I'm there to watch the dang movie, man. That's why I really don't get concessions, That's not to say never, but I really try not to, unless I'm desperate, where I'm like, man, I haven't eaten anything all day. I got to just get something, man. But ultimately, I'm there, and at the most, I'm going to get a coffee. That's fine. A coffee, that's going to wake me up. That's going to keep me going. But, you go to the cinema now, and they got a whole damn menu. And especially at the dine-in cinemas, that's wild to me. That's the last thing I want to be hearing, besides dudes, talking on their, phone and talking to each other. There's this dude slurping down a goddamn chili dog right in my ear. It's like, oh my goodness gracious, man. I'm trying to watch this sad movie, and I got this dude eating up a storm. But I love it, man. When I go into a cinema, I just get overwhelmed with Euphoria. That's kind of where part of that the name, that Cinephoria name, that was just kind of a placeholder, but it really kind of is, man. It's not just the films that give you that euphoric kind of feeling, but it's sort of like when you go to a cinema, when you go to a drive-in, and you're just watching these films on a big screen. You're in this nice theater, man. Even the theaters that aren't very nice, even you go to some local theaters, and sometimes there are some issues. It's like the projection's not correct or whatever it is, or maybe the seat's kind of messed up. You got to see the good and the bad. But to me, the best home theater in the world is not going to beat just going to a regular cinema. People could disagree, and I get it. Especially if you're living. I didn't quite realize until a little while ago how ticket prices varied from place to place. So I know that if you're in an area like Boston, New York, or like Chicago, LA, these big city areas, that I know that the prices are upcharged there. So I understand, let alone if you're with, a family and all that, you're going to see a new, family movie, you're spending how much money on just tickets alone, let alone concessions and all that. And I get it, so I don't blame people for not wanting to go to the cinema, but also at the same time not here to, weigh other people's cons of not going. I think everyone has their reasoning, and that's fine. I'm speaking for myself in that I just going to the cinema as of late I have just been it's been all in perspective, where I just love it so much. And even if I walk out of there and I see like a bad film, I saw a film recently, and I was like just a total stinker. I'm still glad I saw it at a cinema and I didn't see it at home, because especially in a cinema, you're there, you're focused on the screen, you're at home, you're like, oh, I'm gonna play my phone, or anything like that. And I've been guilty of that a couple of times, where I'm watching a movie that's not too crazy, and I'm like, man, I gotta get off my phone. What am I doing? I'm not gonna pretend like I'm like I just throw my phone across the room. But 9 times out of 10, you're at the cinema, and it's just like, and especially once you're there too, if I'm the kind of guy, if I'm watching a film, I'm watching it to the end, no matter how bad it is. But at least at the cinema, there's less of a chance to turn it off, because I think that a lot of streaming services have this, Joe Schmo who's scrolling through, you watch 5 minutes, I don't like it, I'm gonna turn it off, And to me, if you're going to the cinema, I guess you could go and ask for a refund. I've never done that before in my life, for any reason. Even if I had to leave early because there was an emergency or something like that, which I don't know if that's actually happened either. But either way, no matter how bad a film is, and I watched a real stinker in theaters recently, holy my gosh, man. I'm there, I paid my ticket, I made the point to leave the home, to get the car in the parking lot, to walk in there, man, and see it on a big screen. And I love it. I will never, ever not go to the cinema. The only time I won't is if I'm dead or something, man. And even then, I'm sure they could probably put my ashes in a little popcorn bag or something like that and put it in the seat next to me, or put it in the seat next to whatever, man, So it just really kind of made me reflect, sort of on the memberships that I was paying for, and just how much I love it, and how essential it is to my life, where there will never be a time when it is not a priority to go to the cinema, or to make it the weekend plans will always be working around when can we go to the cinema. And it's funny because when you're younger and your parents take you to the cinema, and it's this magical kind of thing. It's sort of maybe you don't go too often, or maybe it's a special kind of thing where, oh man, you're just there. You're all these the lights around the posters, and you can smell the popcorn, and you see, and you hear people kind of chattering in the lobby, and you're walking down this nice hallway. Maybe you have velvet carpets or something like that, and you walk into the theater. You walk up the ramp, and it's my gosh, there's the screen, man. It's huge. I'm gonna be watching something that I can't get at home right now, and that's a feeling that really has not left me. No matter how often I'm going, it's still that feeling of just wow, the excitement of walking into a cinema. If I'm out of town and I pass by a cinema, I get excited. I'm just man, I wonder what that cinema layout looks like. And if I'm at it, whatever it is, man, just making the point to. And it's one of these things where I'm kind of reiterating a lot of the same points I talked about before, but just going yesterday, it was one of these things again, of just man, I will never not love this, and I will never not see a film theatrically if I have the opportunity to. In terms of, I'll just wait for home on that. Not necessarily like, oh, I'll just see every single thing that comes out, because obviously I don't have the time to do that, man. There are films this year I just didn't get an opportunity to see, and that's fine. You're not going to catch everything, but I'm never ever going to be like, I'll wait for that at home, whatever. I don't have to see it in theaters. Like, sort of like, man, if it's playing in theaters, I'm going to go see it. If I want to see it, it better be a good reason why I don't see it. It better be somebody dying or something, or I can't get to the cinema or something, because I'm never gonna get to that point. So yeah, man, I'm just so happy that even like the box office this past weekend, I was looking, everyone talks about, let me get some of this water. I'll go on a bit more about it. Excuse me for a second. Good Lord. Had to get a sip of water there. And I'll get some of this coffee too, why not? Everyone talks about, oh man, no one's going to the movies anymore, this and that, no one's this and that. And, sorry, let me pause this for 1 second. I don't know what the cats are doing. Sorry about that, had to pause it briefly because the cats are going crazy, had to make sure they weren't breaking anything. But what I was talking about before is that people are talking about, oh, no one's going to the cinema anymore, but let's wait at home. And then, I was out of town this past weekend, and I was walking out of the cinema, and they had the Taylor Swift, I don't know what, a music video, like not a concert. It was a promotion for like the new album. I don't really know. It was like a lyric video thing, but it's also like music videos. It's sort of like whatever. It's like a promotional sort of thing. And I'm walking out the lobby, and it's clear that everyone's there for the Taylor Swift thing. They have the t-shirts on, and it's very obvious, a lot of like young girls, group of girls and all that, and lo and behold, this weekend it plays for one weekend and it makes 35 million, number one. So it's sort of like, oh, okay, so these are ironically enough, to Taylor Swift fans who are actually going to go out to the cinema and go and see something they're not going to wait at home for. 'Cause I'm sure it's going to be released at home. I know the concert movie that she did, I think was on Disney. It's on Disney Plus now, but that was in theaters. Made a whole bunch of money and this and that, and it's sort of like, wow, a lot of film fans could really take some notes from the Taylor Swift fans. And I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. I don't really know like the music or anything like that. So I'm not sitting here like, yeah, the music's great too. I really couldn't tell you how the music is. It's not for me. I'll tell you that. But they're the ones who are going out there. It's there for one weekend. They're making it number one, and I'm like, man, it's sort of like people who talk about, oh, there's no good movies anymore. It's like, well, do you go to the cinema? Do you keep an eye on it? It's like, or are you just looking at like, the big sort of like, giant, studio movies like that. And that's not to say they're all bad or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, if you're looking at the slate of upcoming movies and you're like, oh man, another superhero movie, another, sequel to that, it's like, well, keep an eye on the cinema, man. There's plenty of good stuff coming out, So it's sort of like, go out there and actually take a look, man. It's not just the big, loud, obnoxious movies. There's plenty of great stuff out there. I guess briefly, two films back to back. I'll talk about that were real good to watch in the cinema. First up, I'm gonna talk about these briefly because actually I didn't even mean to talk about these, but I figured I went to the cinema, so I might as well talk about them. I'll talk briefly about Good Boy from this year, directed by Ben Leonberg. This is a Shudder film. Very short. Well, I shouldn't say very short, but it's an hour 12. Follows the perspective of this dog, Indy. Now it's funny. This is listed as a comedy first, and I don't know what comedy there was in this movie. Ain't no comedy in this. Pretty intense movie. But we got this dog, and he is living with this guy played by I think it was. It's not. I don't think it's Ben Leonberg plays the main guy. I forgot. This guy Shane, I think. Shane Jensen. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Anyways, this guy's moving into, I think it was his old home. There's something going on with his family there. Anyways, but he's getting really sick. There's something wrong going on, and the dog is seeing these kind of entities, these like shadows that are lurking around. It's sort of like when you see your pet, like your cat or your dog. You're like, what the hell are you looking at? And it's this. We follow this dog Indy. He really has to kind of go out of his way to protect his owner, and it's one where I've seen a lot of acquaintances give it kind of middling reviews on Letterboxd. I said middling reviews, I mean like 3 stars, which is like middle of the road, and yeah, I think when it lacks in some narrative cohesion, I think it more than makes up for in just the filmmaking itself. To me, I'm watching this and I'm focused on the film, but I'm also like, I'm also like watching just how they're manipulating shots, how they're manipulating shadows. I'm imagining them like calling the dog off screen and all that, and how they're using certain lighting techniques. And actually, there's there'll be like a part where you can see the just tricks with editing. Like there'll be a part where a dog is where Indy's like getting attacked or is like being like lunged out or whatever, and to have Indy move in this way as if he was trying to fight off the attacker, they like reverse the shot, which is obvious to see, but it's brief enough where you go, okay, that's a clever way to do that, I always think about that shot in Threads where they show the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of the nuclear bomb that goes off, and they have that shot of it looks to be like a cat who is being affected by the radiation, and then you find out after the fact that they actually just gave that cat a bunch of catnip, so it's rolling around having fun. But then you reverse the shot, and it looks like the cat is under distress, and it's stuff like that where I'm like, yeah, okay, that's just a simple trick like that, but it's effective, it works. And I would also recommend. It doesn't really give an indication, which kind of a shame it doesn't, because I think a lot of people are going to leave before the movie's over. Is after the credits, there's a great like little 5-minute thing about how they made the film, had the frustrations of it's just these two this husband and wife, Ben Leonberg and Alex Cannon, and their dog Indy, and how it's just the whole breaking down of how they made the film. Indy would only work for certain times of the day, and they're like, all right, that's all, we can only get a couple hours today, and they made a point to not go crazy with dog or like that. It was a really, really solid making of that. I hope at least on Shudder they'll include on it. I imagine it'll probably be on the Blu-ray, because Shudder are pretty solid about putting their films out on Blu-ray. Ironically enough, it's funny that Netflix and all of them could really take some notes about getting their films out and not just waiting for someone else to put them out. But it's a solid film, man. It's one where horror this year has been so tricky for me. It's not particularly a genre that I'm jumping to, but I like to watch basically all. I like to watch any kind of film, but horror is the one I would say I have the least kind of. I have the most amount of diminishing returns. But to me, the horror that I find the strongest, that I get the most out of, I should say, are ones with good characters, where I actually like the characters. And this, you could say, well, Indy's a dog, you're going to be sympathetic for it anyways. And yes, that is a crux the movie does not hang on. If you see any animal in distress in the movie, you're going to automatically, well, at least, gosh, I hope you'd be sympathetic. But it doesn't do that. It's not just the dog getting attacked and then, oh man, you feel bad now, I've seen plenty of films like that where they have, like, they'll have an animal getting attacked, and it's like, oh man, aren't you sad now? It's sort of like, that's not drama, man. You can do that to any, you can do that with any animal out of context. I'll feel sad. I need actual context for this. But it's a solid film overall, and like I said, with the narrative hiccups that are there and that are obvious, I'm not going to deny. And if somebody said they didn't like the film because of that, I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. To me, I was just so involved with these two characters. I liked sort of the little sprinkles of this mystery that's going on. And it's funny to see Larry Fessenden pop up in the film, because I was like, did he do this film or what? And then, before the fact, and then he popped up in the film, and I was like, oh, it's great, Larry Fessenden. He's great to see him. And then the ending of the film, I was just like, my gosh. It's funny, I talked about, a little while ago, when I was talking about Robot Dreams, the animated film, but there's films that have, it'll just have like a one quick moment that is overwhelmingly emotional. And I talked about Robot Dreams. There's a moment in that I can't say, that's kind of not even a spoiler, but it's sort of like the less, when it happens, it's so overwhelming. And then I was talking about The Rider, there's a moment like that. Anyways, there's a brief like moment in this film at the very end, and it's one that you probably wouldn't even think of. Indy just like reacts to something, and I like almost got emotional on the spot right there. I thought it was so well done, just a quick little thing that it was not manipulative. It really, really put the whole film together, and then the film ends right there. It ends like 2 seconds later, and I was like, my gosh, man, this is it has its narrative faults, but I look at this the same way that I look at a film that a lot of people don't like, which is 28 Years Later. And I think that one's more divisive. I know a lot of people who really do love that film, and I think it's a great film, but to me, I like horror that actually I'm getting something more out of than just like, oh, that had good kills, or that like this. So with me, like between this and 28 Years Later, if there's that moment where I'm sitting there and I'm almost getting like choked up because of how invested I am with these characters and how the journey they've been on, I will put that above any traditional like plot issues I have. It's got to be egregious for me to not to be like, all right, this is bad. Because I watch so many films so many horror films, so many contemporary horror films that I just get nothing out of. That's not even to say I dislike them, but I'm somebody who really likes characters. I like being invested, and that's not to say I don't like, slashers or anything like that. Like an 80s slasher, you watch those films for the kills and that's fine. I'm just not interested in that anymore. I see new films like that and I go, okay, this is for an audience and I'm not that audience, and that's fine. It doesn't mean I think this is like a terrible film or anything. I just think that this didn't work for me. So I'm not gonna, sit here and be like, I didn't like this film. Why is everyone else like it? But to me, when I look at like that, like when I look at 20 years later and I look at this, if I'm walking out of the theater, well, besides the very ending of 20 years later, which is a whole other conversation. But if I'm walking out of the theater and I'm actually reflecting on the character stuff in that film, then I'm like, man, to me that excels above just sort of generic, the horror movie. And I see, like, I don't know. I don't want to like dog any movie. There's just some movie trailers I see. I try not to watch movie trailers. There's some I see where I'm like, man, what is going on here? Like this feels like a tax write-off. Like, who is making some of these movies, man? I just I don't know. I'm not gonna dog anything. I understand, and I also can't judge anything by a trailer. There's been multiple films this year, I think, with bad trailers that I watched the film where I'm like, man, I love that. Two films immediately come to mind. I'm thinking of The Ballad of Wallace Island and The Roses, where I just saw those. I kept seeing those trailers so much. I'm like, man, these just look annoying. And then I watch them, and I'm like, oh no, they look annoying because they didn't know how to market it. Because they were actually, I think, both really well written and really smart films. But they were like, we can't, how do we market this to a wide audience? So Good Boy. I mean, I don't want to say this is like a great film because I don't think it is, but I think it's one of my favorites of the year. It's one that if I'm walking out of the cinema and even a week later I'm still thinking about, that's a great sign right there. And then briefly I'll talk about the Smashing Machine because I'm running out of time here, so I won't go too long on this. Benny and Josh Safdie both have new films out this year. This is Josh Safdie's film, and I'm sorry, this is Benny Safdie's film. I apologize. Josh Safdie has Marty Supreme coming out in a few months, which I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I'll be there definitely. But Smashing Machine, quality drama. Dwayne Johnson is an actor who I think has always kind of got lost in the big kind of studio action movies, and those are fine for what they are. Those are movie star films. This is more of I would say, a vehicle for him to kind of show his acting chops, and I think he does phenomenal in the film. Benny Safdie is really good at working with actors. I look at like Robert Pattinson in Good Time and Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, and now Dwayne Johnson. This, like, Robert Pattinson and Adam Sandler, I would say, even before those, I thought were great actors. Maybe Robert Pattinson, I don't know if I saw any real kind of dramatic stuff before Good Time. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but like in those films, both great performances. And here, I think Dwayne Johnson just does fantastic as well. I'm watching him give this very kind of this soft kind of dialect throughout the whole film, and even when he's getting frustrated, you see this idea. You see this guy is kind of on the verge of maybe lashing out and yelling. Like, there's one part early on where his girlfriend, played by Emily Blunt, she like makes the wrong kind of drink for him, and you can see he's getting annoyed, but he's trying to keep it at bay. And then there's like this one long scene that I think is just the highlight of the film. And it's one thing where I've said before, I don't like melodrama in movies. There's a couple films that immediately come to mind, or that I'm just like, man, this is way too melodramatic. But here, there's like a long argument between them set to the song Jungle Land by Springsteen, and that whole scene, I was just floored. I was like, this is not melodramatic. This is a couple, and you see the push and pull. You see how they're both in the wrong, or they both could see how the other is in the wrong, but they both are, you could say, justified in their reactions, and just where it goes to, I think, is so well done. And I'm like, man, it's kind of a shame. I know this movie got middling reviews. I thought this was really great, but it's a shame that this didn't get more of a reaction, because I think a scene like that is one that people would be like, man, like that's a highlight of a scene of the year. But I just thought this was a great film, man. I'm really interested to see what Josh Safdie does and Marty Supreme, because if this is, I hope they end up doing another film together, because we saw what happened with the Coen brothers, sort of the diminishing returns on some of those. But this film I thought was just fantastic. It's a shame that it didn't do too well. because I really think this is just one of the strongest of the year. And I would talk more about it, but I'm down to my less than a minute, so I'm going to end that right here. So, hey, you guys take care. I appreciate you so much listening. Keep an eye on your cinema, man. Even if you're somebody who doesn't like going to the cinema, just keep an eye out for some of the films playing. You know, that's all it is, man. These films, that, you know, we live in such a fast world now, where if it doesn't grab you in the first 5 minutes, then they're out of there. But just keep an eye out on stuff. Just be aware of just some really, really quality films coming out, and pass them along to your friends, to your acquaintances. Just keep the conversation going, guys. And that's all I got to say. So, hey, thank you guys so much. I'll be back next time for another episode, and take care. That's all I got to say.